Good evening and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Eugene Chan, and our guest tonight is Professor Witman Hung, who is the Hong Kong Deputy to the National People's Congress. He's also the Principal Liaison Officer for Hong Kong Shenzhen Qianhai Authority, and in that capacity, we are very pleased that he can speak to us about the opportunities that the Qianhai development present to Hong Kong. Welcome, Witman.
Thank you.
The name Qianhai is becoming more and more familiar to us. In news and media, basically, we hear the name all the time. As I understand it, the official name, which I could read from here, is called the Qianhai Shenzhen Hong Kong Modern Surface Industry Cooperation Zone, which has been a special economic zone in Shenzhen in 2009, which was created to boost the cooperation between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. And in September this year, the central authorities have announced they will increase the size for 8 times from 15 square kilometers to 120 square kilometers to further boost the cooperation between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And in the recent Chief Executive policy address, this is also an integral part of her work. And some say this is going to be the blueprint for Hong Kong's long-term development. So since you are the liaison officer, maybe you're the best person to tell us all, what is Qianhai and what is this new plan all about?
Yes, thanks, Eugene. So first of all, Qianhai has been in place, just like you said, quite a while ago. Actually, to be exact, it's 2010 when the State Council approved the setup of this zone. Okay, but it took them 2 years. Also, there's a local legislature to go through. And then I have been on board since 2014. So at the beginning, it was only 15 square kilometers, but also it's a main testing bed for opening up and reform. Now, on 6th of September, this new document released. If you read the document, it actually says comprehensive and deepening, and then Qianhai, the long name, reform and open up. So the main focus is not really on the geographical expansion, although that's part of it, just let's say 8 times. The more important thing is a more comprehensive and deepening of the opening and reform of Qianhai, in particularly more open to Hong Kong, and also reforming our own internal procedures and regulations to make it easier for Hong Kong people to come to Qianhai, to work, to start up, and for professionals to practice. So that's the main essence of the whole document. Of course, we can go through in detail later, but in essence, it's about really, we have been doing reform and opening up. Now is a time when we have tested quite a few things, and with the Greater Bay Area, the overall plan, it's the time for us to further deepen and more comprehensive, wider opening up.
Well, Witman, since you mentioned about the document, which I have read, I'm sure some of the viewers will try to read as well. I think this is the best opportunity for you to explain to us, because the new plan says by 2035, Qianhai will boost a world-class business environment and become an engine for high-quality development with strong capability in global resource allocation, breeding innovation, and leading coordinated development. The terms are very big names, big terms. What does that mean?
Well, this is obviously the long-term goal. The first is business environment. We have been trying to improve the business environment, make it easier, try to learn from Hong Kong. And there has been a series of reforms in the past that helped. For example, we were the first to have this one-stop shop for setting up a company. There was delegation from various ministries at the central government level to give us the power so that, for example, any foreign enterprises, foreign investor enterprises of less than 300 million RMB, or 300 million US actually, we can do the actual registration without going through the authority in the city. Okay. There was other things to, for example, there's this thing called QFLP, Qualified Foreign Limited Partnership. Basically, we recognize the number 9 license of Hong Kong, so that people with that license then can set up a private equity firm in Qianhai and get the license. So these are all the reforms and opening up that we have done, both in the professional services and finance area in the past. Now, with this new document, what we're saying is let's widen the scope. Let's deepen, the reform. Let's try to see, okay, for example, in what is now called a cross-border practicing, The original scope, for example, is only on the engineering, surveying, and architect for Hong Kong developers. Can we widen the scope to be non-Hong Kong developers, government projects, and the way of practice would be the same. In the past, we were the first to allow, for example, Hong Kong lawyers to set up joint venture firms in Qianhai. Actually, there was the first one was set up there, and then recently, they have expanded to tax professional firms. Mm-hmm. But in the future, with the new document, what they're saying is, in the past, even you have a joint venture, Hong Kong lawyer can only do thinking about Hong Kong law, and for the mainland law, you still need the mainland lawyers, which is still the same firm. You can have one invoice, but separate bill, separate services, one bill. But now what they're saying is they will be allowing Hong Kong law professionals, mostly lawyers, to act as professional witnesses in the court of Qianhai to explain Hong Kong laws. So the background of that is that since 2015, we have introduced this thing is that Hong Kong-related commercial dispute can be tried under Hong Kong law if that is agreed in the agreement.
Right.
Okay, and there's many cases that have already been tried.
Right. But since you've been there in 2014, has there been a lot of people knocking on the door and want to go to Qianhai, or it has been very lukewarm and not many people have been there?
There are phases. Okay, when I first started, there were about 300 Hong Kong firms registered in Qianhai in 2014. Now it's about 11,000. So there's a huge surge in I think 2015 and 16 and 17. There's a slowdown a little bit last year, I think, because of the pandemic.
Right.
People can't cross the border, so how can you set up a company there? So, but in general, there's a lot of interests.
Right. Yes, Witman, you also mentioned another term, calling a test platform for deepening reform and innovation. I mean, they're not very clear term of what it means. So what does it mean to our viewers? I mean, who should be going there, meaning deepening reform and innovation?
Well, the deepening of reform and innovation is our authority. Okay, we will deepen our reform, change our regulations, change our rules, make it more flexible. But who should come in? I mean, mainly there are three kinds of Hong Kong, the professional firms, whether it's legal or, accounting, and then all the engineers, architects, and surveyors. And then finance, obviously. There was a lot of finance companies already set up in Qianhai, but there will be more because the new Wealth Connect first has been established in Qianhai already. And then the innovation and technology sector. This is another area because when we first set up Qianhai, there were four major areas. It's called modern services. So how do we define modern services? So it includes professional services, information systems, finance, and modern logistics. Okay. Now they also include what we call business services. So that includes things like lawyers and accountants.
Right.
So these are the main areas that we attract Hong Kong firms to come in.
Yeah. Very briefly, you mentioned about 11,000 companies now. And with the new plan, do you anticipate the numbers to go up? Would this be a new phase of attracting more people who want to go to Qianhai, especially with the recent policy address and also with central authorities document?
Oh, definitely. I think there will be a growth because obviously geographically we're bigger. In terms of scope, it's also wider. I don't see, we don't have a calculated number of what's the target of the number of. Some of these is maybe even if they already set up a company, they can widen the scope of the services as well. Okay. So and also in this new territorial expansion, there's a one large section basically on maritime economy, and exhibition. And also the airport is now part of Qianhai, the Shenzhen airport. So that area is a brand new because in the past it's not included in our 5 services, right? So.
Okay. Well, before we go to the break, let's talk about the policy address of CE that she delivered 2 weeks ago.
Right.
She mentioned Qianhai 59 times in the document.
Right?
Yes. And of course, the Northern Metropolis strategy was a key component. So, and she also talked about twin cities in 3 circles, Pet and Shenzhen. What are your thoughts on that? Since you're very familiar with Qianhai, what do you see that? How do you see that?
I think it's very smart and it's really very visionary. if you look at the three circles, one of which is called the Shenzhen Bay Quality Development Circle. Okay, and if you look at the circle is actually the northwest of Hong Kong and Qianhai. Okay, the whole thing. And what it means really is we're going to build a new core business center in the west, northwest of New Territories. Okay, Hong Shui Kiu and Tuen Mun and Yuen Long. So that really actually is reciprocal to Qianhai. Qianhai will introduce a lot of what we call cross-border business opportunities.
So this new northern metropolis will have a synergy with Qianhai for sure.
Definitely.
Right. And also I want to ask you, Mr. Liang Haiming, which is the Dean of the Belt and Road Institute at the Hainan University, speak at the Global Times, saying that our government needs to establish high-level working groups between the Guangdong, Shenzhen and the Hong Kong government. Do you agree?
Oh, yes. In fact, there is a high-level link in the past. However, I think that also needs to be strengthened. I just read from the news today, actually, I think the chief executive under interview in Guangzhou talk about escalating the linkage between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. In the past, it was the mayor of Shenzhen and the chief secretary of Hong Kong. Now it will be the party secretary of Shenzhen and the chief executive. Right. She just mentioned that, I think, a few days back.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much. And maybe we'll go for a break. And don't go away. Welcome back. We have been talking with Witman Hung about the new plan for the expansion of the Qianhai-Hong Kong Cooperation Zone. And we are going to continue to explore how this can benefit Hong Kong and how a unique strength can contribute to the economy of our motherland. Witman, on the first part, we talked about the CE's policy address. I want to ask you, do you have any suggestions on the detailed planning on the Hong Kong side to best leverage on the Qianhai plan and the northern metropolis?
I think yes. First of all, I'm glad to see this northern metropolis being planned. Now, on the left side, which is the northwest side of New Territories, today there's very little job opportunities. I mean, the likes of Yuen Long and Tuen Mun, people have to travel all the way to Central or to East Kowloon to work. If we build a new core city center there, core business area there will be new job opportunities, so people can stay there, and also, in fact, you can increase the density of development in places like Yuen Long, which today is not very dense. Another thing important is with the further development of Qianhai, there will be a lot of cross-border opportunities, cross-border professional practices, cross-border finance, as well as cross-border logistics and e-commerce. So what I would suggest is the Hong Kong side would build a reciprocal area. For example, when we do have the cross-border logistics for the cross-border e-commerce, I would suggest that we can build a park for these cross-border e-commerce people, as like a startup park, as well as a logistic distribution center to help them to because today there's the roads are not that good in that part of Hong Kong. On the other hand, we should build some more, like grade A business buildings, so the finance companies can also set up there to work with Qianhai or all these cross-border like Wealth Connect, Insure Connect, all these things in the future. And also, I understand that the Hong Kong government is trying to plan to build some tech-related stuff in 5 acres of land in Lau Fao Shan. Okay, so that area also needs to work closely with Qianhai in terms of technology collaboration. And what is most important is we're going to build a railway connection between Hong Shui Kiu and Qianhai. Now, this has been suggested for a long time, but finally, I think the authorities have made up their mind to build that rail. Once you have that rail connection, then people live in the northwestern part of Hong Kong, they can actually work in Qianhai and commute on a daily basis. This will further, ease the burden on the Chuen Wan line, as well as allowing more people to live in that area, solving the housing problem in Hong Kong.
Witman, from what you've been telling us, obviously this Northern Metropolis strategy is really opening up all the possibilities for Qianhai, and it's going to be a real good blueprint for Hong Kong's future development. And also I want to ask you, in Macau, they've got what I call Hangqing, and then they have kind of a dual director system whereby the Guangdong and Macau's chief executives are having a joint governance.
Right.
But in this Qianhai cooperation zone, as you said, we don't have the authority. Why is that? Simply.
Well, the entry point is very different. And the purpose is very different. The purpose of Hengqin is really to give a geographical area so that Macau can expand their industries. As you know, Macau has been very, very narrow in terms of the industry. There's only one industry there. Okay, but because of the limitation of the size of Macau, they need more land. And Hengqin is just very close to them. They already have the University of Macau there already. So now, really, it will give the physical area, physical capacity, so that Macau can develop their new industries such as IC, Chinese medicine, all these. Whereas in Shenzhen and Hong Kong collaboration, that was never the key. The key is really like, lower the entry points, allowing more Hong Kong companies to come in, allowing more Hong Kong professionals to practice, and also to really build a very robust cross-border finance. Okay, so that's why the focus of Qianhai is really on the reform and opening up, instead of the geographical areas.
Since you mentioned about Hong Kong's strength, I'm sure all our viewers will be from some relevant sectors. I think the three main ones are the financial services, professional services, even technological. See, Financial Secretary Paul Chan has called it a milestone in cross-boundary capital flow integrated Bay Area with all this happening. So what other opportunities would it give rise to all entrepreneurs?
I think finance is very simple. Okay, there is a large growing number of middle income or high income people in China, and they want to invest. They want to do asset management, and Hong Kong is one of the best places to do asset management. So by having this link between Qianhai and Hong Kong, we can manage the fund in an orderly manner to Hong Kong. For example, in the Wealth Connect, right? It's right now it's like 1 million per person, but the total cap is 150 billion RMBs. So there's a large demand for this kind of cross-border asset management, and vice versa as well. Hong Kong people sometimes they want to allocate some funds to renminbi-backed assets. Okay, they can also leverage this asset. So a lot of this cross-border fund connection is very important. Second is professional services. I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of new infrastructure building because they expand the scope in Qianhai. Huge opportunities for Hong Kong professionals. Okay, right now we're already allowing Hong Kong professionals, like in the construction-related professionals, they can actually practice in Qianhai without needing a license.
But in time, also healthcare professionals as well.
Healthcare is already allowed under SIPA. So, and then in this document, we also say we welcome Hong Kong healthcare industry to come in and set up like things like hospitals, universities, education. So there will be a lot of these new opening up here. And the last part is the tech part. Well, obviously we have the loop. We have another connection in Futian. But here what we have is a ecosystem. In Qianhai, there are a lot of registered venture capitalists, private equities, angel funds, as well as things like we have an IP court, intellectual property court, and IP professionals as well. So this kind of ecosystem will help to foster the collaboration, for example, between the strength of Hong Kong, which is the fundamental research of our universities, with the industries in the GBA areas, but they can make the connect in Qianhai. We're already working, for example, with the city universities of setting up 3 major laboratories. So these things will all go up. I think there is a huge opportunity, but you need to find for yourself.
Since you mentioned about our strength, which is legal services, I know they will be having an international legal service center, as well as what we call International Commercial Dispute Resolution Center in Qianhai, which is mentioned in the 14th Five-Year Plan. Will Hong Kong laws be applied in that Qianhai cooperation zone?
Right now, we're already allowing the any Hong Kong-related commercial dispute. When we say Hong Kong-related, it means either one of the parties is a Hong Kong company or a subsidiary of a Hong Kong company, or if the transaction happens in Hong Kong. Right now, that's already can be trialed under Hong Kong law. Actually, in this document, they will say expanding the scope of this. So I don't know how expand. Maybe non-Hong Kong related, for example, commercial dispute. Maybe in the future we'll be allowing Hong Kong lawyers to actually represent. we have to do more reforms to boost up this thing. But at least it's already mentioned that we should expand this area. And in the International Arbitration Center, it's already set up. There's about 37% of arbitrators are actually Hong Kong arbitrators already
That's
today.
a very good
So in the future, we can work with Hong Kong together to do that.
Right. In the last part of our show, we want to talk about the strategic importance to Hong Kong and Hong Kong people. As you know, in the past, we've been trying to promote the Greater Bay Area to young people. It's not very effective. And they're concerned about the lower salaries, their employment prospects, whether the work experience will be counted, be recognized. Some worry about their culture, language, and freedoms. And the Macau chief executive has managed to get an agreement for the people in Huangqing to be able to access social media platforms. So I believe you co-founded the GBA Youth Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center. Can we do something similar, in short?
Well, right now, if you use a roaming device, you also have access to all social media platforms. Right. What we're saying is we will try to lower the zooming cost. Okay, but because Qianhai area is much bigger than, and it's highly integrated with the mainland. So to do a similar thing like Hengqin, I think in short time is not that feasible.
Okay. Witman, as you know, this kind of the whole plan is called custom made for Hong Kong. Hopefully we will embrace it with both hands so things will work. But do you think these opportunities have been communicated effectively to Hong Kong people, especially to youth? Or if not, what can we do in short?
It's my job, obviously, to do that.
That's the reason why you're here tonight, yes?
So I think, with the help of you and media, we will be promoting. But I think the most important thing is there are some pioneers that are already in there. In Qianhai, there's more than 520 startups that have been, nurtured by us. More than half of them are Hong Kong teams. Right. Their success will create an example for the other youth. So I think my job, one side is promoting, the other side is ensuring those who have entered Qianhai will be successful.
Right. Witman, we had Professor Lok Siu Kai here on our show a few weeks ago, and he has said that it is our last chance to capitalize on our nation's development, like the 14th Five-Year Plan. If we miss the boat, we'll become a liability to our country and we'll lose the niche of one country, two system. Do you agree?
I can't say I totally agree. I think, yes, it is probably the last chance. Okay, and then we'll become marginalized. I don't think we will become a liability that's, in that area, but we'll be marginalized. I mean, our development will be, limited. Right. So it is our, the biggest chance to actually leverage the development of the mainland to help Hong Kong's, future.
Right. Thank you, Witman. I think you have outlined very well to our viewers that there are many opportunities that the Qianhai Plan brings to business and the people in Hong Kong. And thank you all for joining, and have a good week.